Good evening. Welcome to another episode of Reality Check Podcast. I am Carlos, and I am joined by I am Spartacus Marcus and Raul, who chimed in from Miami. Tonight's topic is causes of cultural decline. Cultural being a broad term, there are many aspects to the culture of any nation and any society. Obviously, we're going to be touching primarily music, the arts, entertainment, trying to keep it a little fun. Then I take a break from Iran and all the other stuff. I'm going to start with music because I'm a musician. I know music trivia from to the point that we win a lot of money when we do trivia night here in our clubhouse. But basically, you're looking at what is music. The stage is now. It's understandable. Music is going to have. It's going to undergo changes. I know that. That's only to be expected. We're not going to do doo wop from the '50s eternally. That's understood. All you have to do today, you've heard the saying, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. Well, to a point, yeah. But when it's nothing but imitation, everything is a remake. Every song has been remade. It's incredible. There are few, and yeah, once in a while there'll be a great song. I'll hear them. A lot of times I like my XM radio, it's a Sirius XM because I'll be driving around and go to different stations and hear really interesting new songs, which is great and interesting groups. But so much of the time, go on YouTube. It's remakes of everything, and I don't mean some guy with a guitar doing a cover of Bob Dylan. I'm talking about a recording artist under contract making buku bucks redoing everything. Uh, and the other aspect of music where there's been a cultural decline, let's go to school because in school is where music is big for the student. Most people that are musicians of any kind, particularly on instruments other than rock instruments, you ask them where did you start? Oh, junior high. I was in the band. I was in the orchestra, etc. My high school had both. We had a band that was quite good. We had an orchestra that was as good or better. I played in the orchestra, played the trumpet. Years later, we actually went to Spain. We were invited to Spain with Carroll City High School's marching band and our chamber singers. We spent a week in Madrid. Back then, it cost a whopping $360. Imagine that for nonstop airfare, Miami, Madrid, hotel for a week, most meals, and back. Incredible. That was 1974. Anyway, years later, maybe 15 years later, I got this kid
Yo,
who's coming
$360 back then was a lot of money, though.
for a week in Madrid in a hotel and an airfare,
Yeah.
round trip. It's not bad, but anyhow, this kid asked me, "Hey Doc, can you write me a little check? We're doing the field trip to DC, where the bands, the music things go to Washington DC. That was an annual thing." So I said, "Absolutely, I'll write you a check." And I knew he's going with the band because it's a band trip. Then I said, "Hey, by the way, how's your orchestra?" And he gave me this look like I was asking something from another planet. He says, "Excuse me?" I said, "How's your orchestra?" And he says, "We haven't had an orchestra. Not that since I've been there. I'm a senior." I said, "Really?" We tried to backtrack. So it had at least been 10, 12 years that they'd done away with orchestra. So if you play the trumpet, the trombone, a wind instrument, you're still okay. There's a band. But if you play any string instrument or something like the oboe, you're shit out of luck. You're losing that opportunity. Now, yes, there are charter schools that have that, but again, there's always money for football, and again, I'm not faulting having great football, basketball, sports teams. That's great, but you can see the cultural aspect where music is no longer considered essential in many schools. Marcus, would you like to continue the topic?
I think for me, there's like some cathartic moments where, wow, this kind of really sucks. Like in terms of music, uh, I have my own style, my taste. So if I'm in the car with my girlfriend, where she's the driver, I would listen to what is on her station. And there are times where I would make comments like, "This sucks." I mean, there's like it's either like mumble rap. You guys have no range or tone. The verses are like incoherent. There's no hook to catch it. It seems more like a product than having any soul. And what would be pertinent to that is like, I would go on YouTube, watch like reaction videos, like hip hop artists listen to '70s or '80s music or '90s music for the first
Or
time,
60s.
or '60s, and they're like, "Wow, this is actually pretty good." They're floored by it, like they never heard this before.
They haven't.
And then or they would go, uh, "Oh, I didn't know this was the original song." And the thing is, it's like and they were like iconic. And the thing is about where music becomes more of a product than having a soul is like you look at like Fleetwood Mac, their iconic album is where they all had marital or relationship problems. And
Rumors.
well, yeah, rumors,
I have
Oh,
and
it.
yeah, I
and
remember
and
that. Yeah, sure.
and every song stood on its own leg, and it had a message, and people gravitated towards it. So like the music now, there's nothing that gravitates me, and then and I guess there's a reason why some people they cannot relate to, maybe it's a generational thing, they can't relate to the modern audience. And going back about the modern audience, it when you take a step back, you realize there's a form of brainwashing going on, and it's not just music. We're looking at commercials, we're looking at movies, we're looking at comic books, TV, even fashion. And I'm like, uh, we all experience communism either directly or indirectly. So we have this a bitter taste if there's any form of indoctrination, but but it's recalibrated to fitting to the modern audience. Uh, promoting like diverse casting, injecting like social justice politics to it. Having like this progressive activism, feminizing men, and making uh, a very underrepresented part of the populace, whether it's gay or LGBT or trans, to be more prominent. I think it's like during like the Biden period, like from like 2000 to 2024. I never seen a lot of gayness in a TV show, and I'm like, why? And I'm like watching, I'm trying to enjoy a show with my girlfriend, and it's like, why do I want to see two men making out? And it's like it kind of ruins it for me. And there's a thing called verisimilitude. It's
Very similitude. Yeah.
yeah, where it's like where it's out of place. It doesn't fit. There's no like feng shui to it. So like right now, I guess the big topic, big issue is like the Odyssey. But before then, the big fight was the Lord of the Rings, where you have black elves and black dwarves, and then you go to like the Viking show where you have a black female Viking chief, totally displacing history, and it takes you out of the moment. Like I hear in like an Odyssey, you have an Indian and a black person, and part of Odysseus' crew saying we're Greeks, and it's like you want to be caught up in the moment, but it takes you out of the moment. And in terms of like some like small islands where there's some originality, where there's a push, I guess like in terms of music, country music. I live in Alabama, so I hear more country music than not, but there is a level of a heart to it that is lacking in modern music. In terms of like movies, like horror, they're kind of pushing the boundaries to like really engage the audience, but you don't see it with like action or war movies. Me being a veteran, it's like I get really uh, displaced when people make bad decisions or it's out of character. It doesn't make sense. It's like, all right, it's but I'm gonna and then, yeah, and then and like you watch fashion shows or I think HBO has a feature on this guy who's like leading fashion, but all he's doing is making guys dress up in female clothing, and there's nothing like masculine about it. There's nothing fashion about it. It just it's like vomit inducing. But yeah, that's all I have to say.
For the moment, there will be
Yeah.
more. Raul, go ahead.
Well, just first of all, let me just preface this by saying that I have absolutely zero musical talent. Okay, I'm not really a big fan of music. The only sort of music I guess that I listen to is the stuff that I was kind of used to when I was a teenager, college student type of stuff. We're talking 1970s, disco, rock and roll, Barry White, Motown, that kind of stuff. I mean, that's the only thing that I kind of like connect to, right? I mean, this modern stuff, especially shit like Bad Bunny, has absolutely no appeal to me. My idea of Latin music was heavily influenced by, Gloria Estefan, and
Right.
it's fun, and it was, pop, and it was, you can dance to it, and that was what I remember. And so I don't, like I said, I don't really listen to. I mean, those. I was maybe like 2 or 3 stations that I listen to when I'm in the car, right? And one of them is the sort of the golden oldies, that I'm sort of used to, right? But I have no real appreciation of what young people listen to these days. I stopped listening when the whole rap thing became big, right? I mean, there's a couple of cool songs, Gangster Paradise, that type of stuff that I thought was kind of cool. But generally speaking, I mean, I didn't, pay much attention to that era. And I have absolutely no idea what people are listening to today. I believe you when you tell me that, a lot of it's just sort of, remakes. I think there's been an incredible lack of
It is.
originality lately. And Marcus, in terms of, I mean, the stuff that you see sometimes, I mean, my wife likes to watch, the same sort of series about, the dragons and stuff. And she's been watching one now, I guess, about King Arthur and the Round Table or something, right? And is it Genevieve? The what's her name, man? The female character in those fables or whatever.
Guinevere.
Guinevere was, supposedly this like blonde woman, right? And in the
Yeah.
series, it's blonde, but she's a mulata. I mean, she's kind of like a, it's like, wait a second, that's not the image that I had. I had more like a Swedish girl. You know what I'm saying?
Well, English.
But if you think about it, man, I mean, we grew up in an era, man. I mean, I remember, when you would watch, Anthony and Cleopatra. Charlton Heston was, Anthony. And
Liz Taylor, Richard
Elizabeth
Burton.
Taylor played Cleopatra, right? And
Yes.
they were all like, white, Americans, right? And if you go back and you kind of read a little bit about history, you find out that the Egyptians were, a lot of them were very dark skinned, right? I mean, they were, from Ethiopia and, that whole region around there, right? And
Or Greek nobility.
yeah. But, we have these sort of perceptions of what people should be like, whether it's, Guinevere or Cleopatra or whatever. And but now it's taken to this extreme because now you have like, as Marcus was alluding to, it's like, wait a second, I don't, at least our generation's not used to it, right? I mean, I'm happy to see more diversity in films in terms of, some great actors out there starting, I mean, I remember the 60s, it was Sidney Poitier. Nowadays it's Denzel Washington. You got tons of great, African-American actors and all sorts of, talent in the Latin sphere, et cetera, et cetera. And I enjoy watching them, right? And I think it's more realistic, but I think sometimes Hollywood goes, I think what's happened in Hollywood, and I seem to recall reading about this a while back, that now they are obligated to put people of color in roles, even though, the role might call for, it's a movie set in China, okay, but the samurai has to be black. It's like, whoa, wait a second, what's going on here, right? I mean, it's like, or in Japan, I should say, not China. It's let's say it's a movie about Japan, okay, but now the motion picture industry has to, they are obligated to highlight minorities in every film they make, and to hell with historical accuracy, right? No, we're gonna have Denzel Washington as a samurai in Japan, type of stuff. It's gotten kind of crazy. I mean, at first it sort of like caught your eyes, like, wait a second, what's going on here? No, but now it's happening so often that it's kind of like, okay, fine, so long as it's a good actor or whatever. I mean, what the hell, I get it, okay, but it it just kind of shows how far this extremism, this wokeness has gone, right? I'm like I said, I'm all for that diversity, but when that diversity clashes with historical accuracy, okay, then it's a bit of an issue. It was an issue for me, and it was like, but we didn't, I mean, we were Cuban, right? I mean, I was like, I didn't know that Charlton Heston wasn't a woman. I mean, that Elizabeth Taylor wasn't really Egyptian, or whoever played Cleopatra back then. Crazy stuff. But look, I think, like I said, I mean, I can't really opine much about music, movies. Yeah, I'm a big movie fan. The other night I watched that movie Project Hail Mary. Have any of you guys watched it? Science fiction?
Haven't yet.
Well,
Yeah, I think Ryan Gosling should be his next movie role should be play a black character like Martin Luther King or
well, I tell you,
just for representation
his
purposes.
sidekick in this movie is an alien that's like made out of rocks, and he calls him Rocky. That's actually
Yeah.
well done. Rather long, but I like science fiction and stuff. So my wife was like slitting her wrists as we were watching the movie, but she doesn't really care for science fiction. But I got to kick out of it. I thought it was well done. So
You say mandated. The industry mandated by whom? Do you think it's being mandated?
I think it's the Actors Guild, okay, but it's also just the industry itself. I mean, the people that write for it and everything. They're trying to atone for the sins of the past, okay, where every program was about white people, okay. I mean, it wasn't until like the Jeffersons came around and Archie Bunker, and you started having other people come, people of color there. And I still think that I don't know, but they still feel obliged, even though I think that we're over that time period. It's been long gone, but they I think people in Hollywood live in this sort of perpetual state of victimization, or in search of victimizations, right? And in search of fixing mistakes from the past. I mean, look at this whole argument with reparations for slaves. I mean, what do I got to do with slavery, man? I mean, I didn't. My parents weren't even, in the United States back then, and even then, as somebody pointed out the other day, okay, slaves weren't owned by the government. Slaves were owned by private individuals. Okay, so why does the government have to compensate you for slavery? And more importantly, what about the hundreds of thousands of Union soldiers that were killed? Wanting to reverse slavery, end slavery. Is there any compensation for the families of those people that went out and got killed? So it's just the wokeness gone mad. In our society, and the left just trying to constantly apologize, divide people, find something to be pissed off at, make us feel guilty, make us feel like, oh my gosh, we have to walk on eggshells here because I can't offend anybody. And sadly, it's gone to a real extreme now with this whole transgender thing, man. I mean, some of these people are they're in serious need of mental help. Watching some videos today, this one person who identified as transgender just having a meltdown, man. It's like people need help, man. They seriously do. It's sad.
Well, I wanted to go ahead, Marcus, make your comment because I want to go about the topic Raul just brought up. I want to
Yeah,
segue.
I did too. One, I'm just going to give Raul a little pushback. I don't like calling black people African American unless they're first generation.
Mhm.
Coming from like Nigeria or Kenya.
Yeah.
Slaveborn.
Any generation after that, they're American. And,
Right.
and I'll give you an example. Like Haitians, they don't say African American Haitian or Jamaicans. African American Jamaicans, they're either
No,
Jamaicans
listen, hey,
or
that's
Haitians.
Marcus. That's a great point. Okay, and it just kind of shows from my generation. Okay, the indoctrination that began when I was a young man. Okay, they were Negroes. Okay, that's what we called them, right? I mean, there was obviously a much more offensive word for them, but I mean, even in polite company, they were referred to as Negroes. Okay,
Well, that's
then
why I said
this,
words have meaning,
right,
and that's how I want to segue to like DEI. How that is a level of indoctrination
right,
on thinking.
but then what happened was, in order to, for whatever reason, we decided that Negroes, which in Spanish is just black. Okay, that's what it means. Negro. I mean, you're dark skinned. We're not really white. We're kind of tanned, or whatever. We're not really white. Okay, my hair might be white, but my face isn't white, right?
And they're not really black.
Huh? And
And they're not
we're not really
black.
white, and they're not really black, right? But I
Correct.
mean, but that was kind of the easy terminology that you used. But I remember in the 70s, if you referred to people as blacks, okay, even though it was like, the English version, I guess, of negros, okay, or it became popular to refer to them as African American, and you would literally have to sort of like, I remember, I would like, wait a second, let me not say Negroes, let me say African American, and after a while, yes, it became habit. But I agree with you, Marcus. It's stupid,
Cubans, yours what like a 30% or black.
right?
Now,
So, it's
They
just,
call themselves Cuban. They don't call African
yeah,
American.
and again, listen, that is a uniquely. I mean, I never understood this stuff, man. Like, when you go to fill out these forms, in my entire life. So what are you? Are you white? I mean, this is like the government was obsessed in knowing what your racial background was, right? You could be whatever you wanted because they always had a category like for other, right? And I know a lot of people that just refuse to be put into the box of whether they're white or black, and they would just put other, and and they might be like really, really white. I mean, they might be lily white, right? But they just found it offensive, so they just checked off other. And then because they checked off other, they suddenly got correspondence for like, minority-owned, scholarships and stuff like that because they checked off other. I mean, look at Elizabeth Warren, Pocahontas, right?
Pocahontas.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's a uniquely American thing, and I think the intention originally was perhaps good, okay, to sort of keep track of, the different racial components of our society, and to make sure that, we were, kind of, I guess, for whatever reasons, for things like that, for scholarships, for funding, whatever, that certain ethnic groups or racial groups weren't being left behind. But it really is kind of silly, So what the hell do you care whether I'm white or black or Indian, American Indian, or Native American, or whatever? I mean, it's insane. You should do away with it.
Okay,
Well,
reparations.
what it's doing,
Reparations. I'd like to go now, please. Reparations are about buying votes. Reparations are about buying votes. You tell them that they were oppressed by the oppressors, and we're going to make those oppressors pay, by God. Getting back to the thing about the movies, um, I tried to start watching a series called Amadeus because, again, I played in a symphony orchestra. Mozart is, important to me. Well, turns out that his librettist, that's the guy that writes the words to your operas, is black. And it turns out that Amadeus is a Polynesian islander. Watson is not black. They created a sister for Holmes, Enola Holmes. She's cute as a button, but again, it's there was a famous movie about an English balloonist. He was the first guy to go a particular altitude. He did it alone. Oh no, but the movie, there's a woman there along with him, of course, because he couldn't have done it
It's
without her.
Hollywood, man. It's silly.
Yeah,
You know, it's
yeah.
silly. It's
The-
checking off those boxes again. Marcus, did you want to say something? I'm sorry. Did you?
Well, part of it was BlackRock uh, pushing the initiative for DEI,
Yeah.
and they're like one of the biggest venture capitalists, and they're uh,
Yeah.
using their full weight to push that agenda, which and it percolated down to education and culture. So like that's why you see like a lot of funding for like DEI initiatives in education, and you get the product. You get like I forget this lady who did that the Bud Light commercial. She was like
Yeah.
Harvard educated with an MBA, and she says,
Dylan
"Hey, it's
Mulvaney.
good to have a
Are you?
transgender for a male audience to put," and it's just an immediate backlash. But what we get is, even though they say it's catering to a modern audience, but what it highlights is the myth of woke capitalism and the myth of the modern audience. So what you're seeing is like a backlash. Like, hey, I don't, if I vote with my wallet, I'm not going to invest in your ideology, your level of brainwashing. So for me, I refuse to watch the Lord of the Rings TV show. I'm not going to watch The Odyssey. It just because I chose to. I'm not going to divest my time. As I'm getting older, I realize time has more of an intrinsic value to me than ever before. So I want to make the most use of it. And the thing is, there is that level of what you alluded to is institutional racism. There people say there's no racism, but thus there is racism, and the right is pushing back. Yeah, there is institutional racism when government is putting quotas or pushing white people out or Asians out to promote like blacks or LGBT getting the type of entrance or funding. Yeah, that's racism. But
By
that's
the way, Hollywood is getting, touching on what Raul was saying about the pressure from the industry. Hollywood is getting their asses handed to them. There has never been a bigger threat for the so-called real actors as AI. They could be looking at being completely rendered irrelevant. The Oscars have been on
Yeah.
a, I don't have a graph right in front of me, but if you chart it, the number, you remember back 20 years ago when people wanted to see what's going to win, The English Patient, uh, Trip to whatever, and great movies that were competing, and
Yeah.
people stayed to the very end of the Academy Awards to see, and the Oscar goes to. Today, it's a bunch of movies only the industry people watch. Nobody watches. The same thing with the movies. How many movies are actually a big financial smash? And another pushback I see, Target got its ass handed to them with those crotch slings in front of the store when little kids are walking in. Bud Light, as you mentioned, Marcus, with Dylan
Yeah.
Mulvaney, got their asses handed to them. Sydney Sweeney, remember Great Jeans? They
Yeah.
tried to target her, and she's never been more successful. It,
But
it actually,
listen, and Carlos, you bring up another point. I mean, talking about movies, right? Because this is the title of this is about cultural decline. And I remember, and I used to enjoy. I mean, I loved going. I still do love going to movies. Okay, and it was just something that you looked forward to because there were always especially during the summertime, right?
yeah,
Hollywood would usually release a lot of great movies, Indiana Jones, all these adventure movies, James Bond, whatever. They were released for the summer. Why? Because kids were out of school, and and Disney as well. The families would go to see the Disney movies, or you'd go to see the latest James Bond movie. A lot of it, a lot of those movies were released during the summertime,
Jaws.
and it was also something that you did as a group, right? You went with your family or your friends, and you went to the movies, and you gathered in a room, and you all sort of sat there quietly, and you watched the movie, and you laughed, and you clapped, and you cried, or whatever. And it was, and then, afterward you had the popcorn and the soda, and you were doing something that is very rare these days, which is socializing. You were out with other people, and when you weren't watching the movie, you were, giggling or laughing or kissing or whatever you were doing, okay? But you were out in public, all right, and interacting with other people. And then afterwards, you would go for a coffee, or maybe before you had dinner, or maybe afterwards you go for dinner. And the mall was filled. And nowadays, it's all about this, man. It's all about this, right? That's the only thing that matters. You see your movies here, you talk to your friends here, you socialize here, you go online here, you hang out with your community here, and nobody does stuff face to face anymore. And that's a real tragedy. And I think it's already, I think, leading to completely different behaviors in this next generation of kids that have grown up with an electronic device in their hands, and they're perhaps lacking in certain social skills, communication skills, because they didn't
Disassociate.
have that opportunity to interact with others.
Dinner and a movie used to mean dinner and a movie. Let's go have dinner, and then we've already checked the newspaper. Remember those? And the movie starts at 9:30. Now dinner and a movie is Grubhub because you can't fucking cook. These people don't know how to boil water, and then we'll watch something on our big screen TV. I mean,
Yeah,
that's cool to have a nice meal and watch something on your big screen TV.
yeah.
But
And
that, as
and
you
by the
say,
way, you
that
go now to
experience is
dinner in a
gone.
restaurant, in any restaurant, okay? And I mean, I saw this the other day. I walked into, my favorite place. I love to go to Yard House, which is nearby.
Yeah,
I was meeting somebody there, and I walked in. I got there a little bit early, so I was kind of like just staring around, seeing everybody, in this kind of restaurant bar, and even the couples that were sitting at tables, they were both looking at their cell phones, and kind of like occasionally glancing over their cell phones to say something. The people at the bar all had their cell phones with them. Um, it was just, it's crazy, man. This is not healthy. I'm sorry. We need to find ways for more social interaction.
children don't know how to have a phone conversation or, God forbid, an in person. Marcus, go ahead, please.
Well, I want to give you an example of a good movie. That is like low budget, great acting, a great script. It's called The Man from Earth. The guy who wrote it is a guy named Bixby. He was a Star Trek writer, and he wrote
What's the name of the movie? The
The Man
Man,
from Earth. The
the Man
Man
from Earth.
from Earth. So the original idea was from an episode he wrote for Star Trek, where it's
Right?
like the guy who's like he's like 6,000 years old. He's like an immortal,
Yeah.
and there was parts of it that the producers didn't want to put, and it stuck with him. It irritated him. So on his deathbed, he wrote a script with his son, and he finished it. Like a week later, he died. And it's the Man from Earth, and it's a guy. He's a Cro-Magnon. He's immortal, and he lived through history. And every so often he had to reinvent himself so people don't catch on. And he's always been a teacher. So he's like a history teacher, a sociology teacher, but he's amazing. He draws the biggest audiences. And at this point in time, he's about to leave. Okay. So he tells all his faculty friends, hey, I'm leaving. So they did like a farewell get together at his log cabin. So he postulated a story. Hey, and they're all like professions of academia. Like one's like a cellular biologist, another one's a history, one's religion, and he postulated a question like, "What if I'm immortal? Let's just say I'm 6,000 years old. What would you ask, and how would you refute me?" And they go, "Well, do you have any proof?" It's like, well, if I'm 6,000 years old, if I want to save a pencil, how long is that going to last? And then they were talking about like key moments in times, like, well, I met Buddha. He's like, what's the most impressionable person you ever met? And he goes, Buddha. And he talked about like how he changed his worldview, where he became more of a humanitarian, a humanist. and he's like he met Michelangelo, but the faculty, and it's all in a couch. They're all getting sucked into this conversation. So you get people who are like naysayers. There's people who are like kind of like half believing if this is true or not. Then they talked about. Then they get onto religion, and this is where like like in the movies there are like 3 chapters, and the third chapter was like a very dark twist where you see people's reality was starting to break, and he was seeing that, and he goes, hey, you know what, I'm just it's an idea for a story, and he backed off. But you see people's worldview start to break, but I can't tell you the why it was, but it's one of those. It's like a hook that catches you in.
I remember that Star Trek episode. I was a huge Star Trek fan.
Yeah,
I remember that.
But he wanted that episode to
Yeah.
go further, and
Yeah.
they pushed him back. He said, you know what, and it took him like 30 years to write a movie.
Star Trek had that quirky aspect of it that it sort of dealt with, a lot of moral
Social.
and societal issues and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's
So
sort
the
of
Twilight
in
Zone.
a good way, right? I mean, they would go back in time, and William Shatner fell in love with this girl, and then she was killed, and he couldn't go back in time to save her because it was against the universal directive or whatever they had. I mean, but it was all this stuff that was really, it made you think as a young person, like, wow, this is kind of cool, right? And I remember that episode with the guy that was immortal, right? He was a
Roman centurion.
Huh?
He was a Roman centurion.
Yeah.
But
the man, it's called The Man from Earth.
Yeah. And you can watch it on Amazon. But the thing is, it's one of those movies that makes you think. And a lot of these shows and movies, it doesn't make you think.
Right.
It just like, it's just there, and it doesn't tickle your brain because everything's a Hollywood formula. You have to have this, you have to have that, and there's very few shows and movies where it goes outside of that. But what it does, it catches the audience to like gravitate towards. Like there's like a horror movie called Obsession. There's a lot of people like it's like a modern day retelling of the Monkey's Paw, but yeah, it just. I mean, I even told you guys to watch on Amazon, not Amazon, on Netflix, the movie short that won an Academy Award called Singers. It's like a bunch of guys in a bar. 18 minutes, but it's like it really sucks you in, and it has a good twist at the end. But what it's doing right now with modern movies, there's no the hero's journey. Everything's like subverted. Like the hero's journey, like Luke Skywalker was like a classic hero, a farm boy becoming a Jedi Knight, becoming a Jedi Master at the end, where he had to fight his father. And you see where he wears white to symbolize his innocence, and in Empire Strikes Back he's wearing gray, to kind of symbolize like the moral ambiguity. Then he's wearing black in Return of the Jedi, but you see part of his sleeve where it's white, like it's like a lapel that kind of flash forward, just to kind of, color symbolism. But it shows the hero's arc, and then like this the woke capitalism where it's subversive, where he's drinking green titty milk, and he's rejecting being a Jedi Master. Wow. And it's like, and then Han Solo's like a deadbeat dad. It's like,
listen, man, I'm still a huge fan of the movies, even though they've changed dramatically. And I think kind of getting back to Carlos, what you were talking about for this this program about cultural decline, right? Movies, I think, also had a real way of bringing us together as a society, right? Because you would go and you would see a really funny movie, okay, and then the next day at the office, okay, which probably doesn't even exist anymore, right? But you would be at work with your colleagues, or whatever, in an office environment, or in your clinic, Carlos, in your case, or whatever, and you would talk about, oh my God, I saw this great movie this weekend. You would tell people about it, and they would, oh yeah, I saw that movie too. It was hilarious. And then you would like laugh over the lines, and so the movies became something that everybody shared because we weren't all glued to this, watching different things, right? We were all like anticipating, oh my gosh, the next movie with that Steven what's his, the famous director, man, Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
Oh, Steven Spielberg's newest movie's coming out. Let's go see that. And then that was like the talk of the town
Game of
for a week,
Thrones,
right?
every episodic. Game of Thrones, every episode, people were
Yeah,
glued.
yeah, that as well, right? And then the other thing that I remember also, in terms of in high school, I mean, I was blessed. I had phenomenal teachers in high school, including a history teacher that was second to none, civics teacher as well. I mean, did both jobs very well. But he would on occasion, bring us films about um, American history, and that long series that was very popular. I forget the name of it right now. We would watch these different, well crafted movies about different times of American history, and that was actually part of the classroom, and it was great because instead of like, we'd actually be sitting there watching a movie, and it was entertaining, right? And you would learn, you were able to connect with characters on a screen, and it made it much more vibrant. And I think we need to go back to that, man. I think that helps to sort of bring society together. I think we need to emphasize, doing less stuff on remote and less stuff on online and less dependence on AI, and finding a way for us to talk in groups and get together again and socialize with each other. Because right now, this country is very, very, very divided for a lot of reasons that we've talked to in different programs, right? Um, Before, we all used to get pretty much the same news, right? There were 3, 4 major television stations, and everybody would watch those at night. And the next day, that was the news, and you would talk about it. But now, the news cycle is 24 hours a day. You're getting bombarded by it. And you're not getting objective news. You're getting what you want to hear, because the advertisers are targeting you specifically and not a general audience. So you're only getting the news that you want to hear in the format that you like and with the political orientation that you like.
It's the algorithm. I wanted to touch on
Right.
some of the problems with this. Again, more backup, and then I also want to end it on also add in that there's a positive side to all this. You're seeing more than ever series based on what used to be a movie. They take a movie and now they make a series out of it. Because why? It's cheaper to do a series, and sometimes it's sad to admit that sometimes a series on cable is better written and better acted and tells a better story than a movie. You go on Netflix or any of those channels, they are just awash in crappy, mediocre movies with half-assed talent. Now that's the not so good part. I do see a good part though. It is possible to make a great remake. Example, you talked about the summer films. I remember very excited to go to the big screen in Gables Theater to see Midway, Charlton Heston, every
Mm-hmm.
alpha male in Hollywood. Phenomenal movie. The remake of Midway was damn good. I mean, they had the names, they didn't fictionalize, they didn't change anything. They told the story probably a little more detailed. So that's a rare example of a movie that can be done and was done and was excellent. The Outlander series, we watched Outlander. That's on Stars Network. It's novels, it's books. Every series, every season was basically one of her books. She's an American author, but my God, that woman did her homework. She got immersed in Scottish history with the Jacobins and the English kings, and just amazing.
A
Not
lot
the
of
Jack.
gayness, though. There was so much gayness
There's a
that
little too much of that, yeah.
for
Yeah,
for
but there
for,
was
for
them
like a
too.
brief 20 seconds, I actually turned gay. But because of the male testosterone in my body, I rejected it. Otherwise, I would have been in the dark side of the force.
Well, Tchaikovsky was gay, but don't tell anybody.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for a movie about Tchaikovsky. At least if they make him gay, Tchaikovsky really was gay. The other thing that gives me hope and encouragement, again, being a musician, I go on YouTube. I watch a lot of, apart from DIY stuff, how to change the timer on this or the light on that or the gauge on so and so. I see a lot of these young people discovering, as you said earlier, Marcus, discovering classic pieces, but also groups of not just people my age who grew up with that music. I'm seeing kids that could be my grandchildren, okay? And they're doing they get the same guitars, the same amps, and they're doing Beatle hits, they're doing Chicago hits to the T meticulously. Somebody educated those kids. I don't know who did, but God bless them. And those kids truly know. My best friend's kids, he's got 4 boys. They
Yeah.
all have a knowledge of classic rock that Raul was alluding to, 70s rock. That's amazing. And another high school friend of mine's got 2 daughters. The eldest daughter, same thing. She's a walking encyclopedia
Yeah.
of that. So
You know,
if it's
I
there,
think,
if you want to get it, if you want to seek it.
yeah. I think Carlos, that there is, we're starting to see. I mean, I've noticed it, in my community. I mean, we're starting to see. I think this next generation understands that they are somehow untethered, right? That they are lacking some sort of sense of purpose or community or whatever it is that you want to call it. But there seems to be a longing there. And one of the places where I see it is in our church. I mean, we have a lot of young people coming to church, which is something that is new and refreshing.
Yes.
And I remember I think I mentioned this before at one point. University of Miami, young people at the University of Miami going to a Catholic mass on a Tuesday evening, okay, at the University of Miami, Suntan U, and some of the girls wearing, veils on the, veiled headdresses. And I remember after the mass talking to a bunch of boys saying, guys, when I was your age, I would, I wasn't going to mass on a Tuesday evening. Why are you here? Why are you doing this? And one of these guys just looked at me and says, Mr. Moss, this is, we need this because this university is just crazy. The level of debauchery here is unbelievable. The women are, practically naked, as they're walking around campus and stuff. And, this is a guy talking to me in a table full of men, young men, saying, what? God, I mean, these women are normal here. I mean, we get to interact with, people that, that we want to, perhaps marry or something, right? But because what's out there right now is not healthy, right? I mean, maybe I'm making too much of that, but I'm seeing more people, young people, seeking out stability, whether that stability is in a family structure, with religion, with socialization, with breaking off from the dependence on technology. I'm beginning to see more of that, and I hope it continues. And I think it's important to emphasize it for the next generation.
Girls are having like a craft day, like a get back to oldies type day, where they're actually sewing, they're doing needlepoint, they're making jewelry, even just a bead chain. They're actually using their hands and creating something,
Yeah.
which used to be something. I mean, I did that my entire life, including for a living. But
Yeah,
for a lot of people, that's a
in
foreign concept.
high school, we had obligatory shops for boys, and the
Yeah,
girls had like homemaking classes, right? I mean, it was obviously
home
very
ec, yeah.
sexist, but we had to learn how to tear apart a lawnmower engine and put it back together again, and and we would be tested on it. We had to learn how to work, had some woodworking projects and things like that, and
Yeah,
those
yeah,
were valuable life skills that my wife, like, when she got married, she was amazed that I could actually, like, fix electrical stuff. I could install
yeah.
switches, and I could, do
Same
basic
here.
electrical stuff around the house. She thought it was like, wow, you can do that. I'm like, yeah, what's the big deal? It's like, I can
Right.
change a tire too. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean,
Minor plumbing. There's people that they hire to assemble. You buy like a shelf unit for books, one of these things maybe, and
yeah,
there are people online can't figure out the instructions. I mean, my God, it brings everything, even a cheap wrench.
no, listen,
Hire me, I'll do it
and by
for
the
you.
way, a lot of the new cars today, especially the hybrids that have those big batteries in the back, they don't have spare tires anymore. They
Yeah,
give you like
that's
a can
dangerous.
of like Fix-A-Flat. That's their idea of like, if you
Yeah,
get stranded on the road, you know, uh,
triple A.
good luck with a Fix-A-Flat, and leave the car there and call Uber to pick you up, and come back with a mechanic or a tow truck or something. But
Marcus, I'm curious. When you were in the Navy, did they teach you guys how to mend, like how to sew on a button, how to mend your uniform, that kind of thing? Was that at all part of your curriculum?
No, but part of the loadout is you get like a small little sewing kit.
Right.
And
Yeah.
like a little for shoe shining as well. And that's part of the loadout.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Who taught you how to sew though? When the sewing kit came up, who instructed you guys on like mending a tear or putting on a button
Hey,
again?
my mother taught me how to sew, man, how to put on
Hmm.
a button and stuff,
Yeah,
right?
but
I mean,
I know, and mine did my grandmother, but I'm talking about in the military because
and
they
it was
used to teach
important.
that.
Well, the thing about the military, before they had like the Velcro patches, you would sew in anytime you increased in rank or you get a little your rockers or any other thing to symbolize what you accomplished, and you obviously you want to get it professionally done, so you don't want to sew it yourself, but take it to the
Metal
cleaners.
trucking.
Yeah, you don't
Oh,
want to feel like in formation or a ceremony, and you're all jacked up, and then you get your chief or your master sergeant breathing down your neck. So yeah.
no, Velcro solved a lot of those problems, right? And
No,
also
but
the
yeah,
name tags, right? The name
everything's
tags, right?
Velcro now.
Before the name tags had to be like, like embroidered, or they had to be like penciled in with your name and a white tab. But now it's all like you get the little Velcro name tags and put them on, Army, and your name, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. But in terms of movies, I mean, I mean, not everything's bad. It's just that it's few and far between to find good music, good commercials, good product out there. And for me, I just want to mention like Villy Villeneuve. He's like a Canadian or French director, but he did Sicario, where he did
Good
like
Yeah,
movie.
the most amazing car chase,
yeah,
where,
yeah.
Yeah,
where
Awesome,
bumper,
that's a good
bumper to
movie.
bumper traffic. But he
awesome.
also did the Dune movies and Blade Runner 2042. But it was a
I've
sequel to
not
Blade
seen
Runner.
that, man. I love the original Blade Runner.
But the thing about it is, it's like if you're like a movie file, you go to school and you learn about lighting, camera angles, like the type of like the configuration of a screen, uh, ways to capture mood and deliver make delivery, and then there's like little Easter eggs that are very subtle that you don't notice, but what was good is if you watch like a breakdown on Blade Runner, that movie, the sequel, where you realize how much of a master craftsman Villeneuve is in terms of soundtrack, the lighting, the camera angles, everything has a message and a purpose. And I remember like watching The Exorcist, like there's a lot of subtle hints
Yeah,
that makes it like a very deep movie. Then
yeah,
you
yeah.
watch like YouTube videos, like why did the clock stop when the Exorcist watched it? And it was just kind of foretelling his death. And then
Yeah,
you
yeah,
get like a
yeah,
phone
yeah, yeah.
call.
No,
But
awesome.
there's like, and then there's like very little subtle snippets of like the demon Pazuzu.
Yeah, no, man. A good movie would play to your emotions and get you all like wound
But
up
so
and
like Sicario, it's one of those you
frightened,
have to
scare the
watch
hell
the
out of
movie.
you or excite you, whatever. I mean, that's the beauty. I mean,
And the
look,
thing about Sicario, it's like you watch it a few times and you always get something more out of it each time you watch. It's like, oh, that's the reason why he said he doesn't want any lawyers.
Yeah,
So,
there's symbolism.
well, listen, talking about young people in movies, I want to share with you guys an experience that I had just the other day. I met this young woman. She can't be more than 30 for sure. She's probably, mid 20s, late 20s or something. Cuban American from Miami. She was here just for a few days from Los Angeles. And she's here in Miami doing research for a movie that they're going to make about Cuba in the 1950s, and particularly the Batista years and how it led to Fidel Castro and the revolution. And this young woman kind of like you know really like pleasantly surprised me because um, I was talking, she wanted to talk to me about my own background and stuff. So we had a cup of coffee and whatnot, And I asked her, I said, how'd you get involved in this like screenwriting business? And she said, well, I said, would you study undergrad? She said, well, I studied biology as a backup in case I couldn't become a screenwriter. I would become a doctor because my father died when I was young and I was raised by a single mom, and times were tough. So I needed a backup. So I studied biology, but I also did a minor in creative writing. And then I got my first job, and then I went back for my master's, and I had no idea. Apparently, Florida State University is like one of the finest master's programs in screenwriting in the country. And it only selects like 5 people a year. It's like a 2-year rigorous program in like screenwriting for movies. And so this girl was part of this class. They sent her to London as well, like for a year to study in the theaters there. And afterwards, when they graduated, they were just talking about what they wanted to do when they finally got out. And to give you an idea why I like this girl so much is because she said when they came to me, what they asked me what I want to do with all this stuff I had learned. So I want to make enough money to lead a revolution and kick the Castros out of Cuba. I was like, yeah.
Yeah, thank God. Yeah.
This girl, I wish she could be my daughter, man. How can I make her my honorary daughter or something, right? It was like, whoa.
Yeah, prepare the papers, right?
Huh?
Yeah, well, there are people waking up.
I loved it because I realized, wait a second, all these Hollywood types aren't really, this girl's obviously very different, right? I mean, she's in Miami, she's Cuban, she's doing some backstory. And I said, promise me that this movie that you're doing is not going to be, some leftist trope. He says, no, believe me, that's not going to happen on my watch. So,
yeah, well, thank God for that. There are people in Hollywood that get big enough. Chris Pratt is a religious individual. Mark Wahlberg, conservative. But you know what else they are? Uncancelable. They cannot be canceled because if whatever studio tells them to F off, they'll tell them to F off and go somewhere else and make a smash movie. And even Sydney Sweeney, that's not up at that level. With her, obviously, it's mostly her appearance. But even she cannot be canceled anymore, whether it's commercials, whether it's selling jeans, or whether it's making movies.
So what's the conclusion? What's the conclusion of this episode? Are we hopeful or pessimistic about the future of young people in America?
Let's go around the clock and then maybe wrap this up. I'm alarmed at some of the stuff, but at the same time, I am reinvigorated and relieved to see that a lot of young people, as you said, the youngest generation is getting it, and they're not drinking the Kool-Aid. They're seeing, this movie sucks, I'm not going to watch it, and they're going on YouTube, they're watching old movies, and aside from movies, they are discovering that they've been sold a bill of goods, and a lot of them are speaking out. You see it with the growth of Turning Point USA. I think that's a perfect example of those people that are not settling for flushing the culture down the commode. Marcus, go ahead, please.
I think nothing's static. I think everything is more like a pendulum swinging. It goes one way, then goes back to another way. We go through moments of craziness, then you get the pushback where it goes towards sanity. And I think a good way for sanity becoming more preeminent is capitalism. The audience doesn't like to be force-fed tropes or an ideology that counters their own. So they could just and you have more choices. And a funny thing about choices is they did like polling where they I don't know if it's Nielsen, where they check what TV shows are being watched. There's apparently like a few hundred new TV shows every year, and most of the audience go back to like the tried and true, like watching Friends or watching like Archie Bunker or Good Times or CSI, where it's where it's more focused towards entertainment. And I like it's not all bad. It's that there are some gems coming through. Like I mentioned about Villeneuve, Sicario, and whatnot with Dune. But like in terms of comedy, I like the buddy cop movies, like The Man from U.N.C.L.E., Nice Guys with Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe. No Hard Feelings was a hilarious movie with I forget her name, but got Matthew Broderick as a father. But yeah, there's definitely out there. I think music, uh, it'll be more of a it'll be the steering will take a little longer because uh, I don't know. I think even people who reach a level of popularity, they're caught up where whether it's complacency, where they have other people make their music for them, and it becomes a formula of making a product and having a soul to it. So,
Yeah.
and that's it.
You in particular, Marcus, with your military background, would love the series The Lioness. They're
Yeah,
already
yeah, yeah.
very good,
It's like a
very good.
Sicario with women.
Hey, yes. So take
Well,
this. Take this
the guy
home.
who wrote Sicario
Yeah,
did Lioness and
right, right,
Landman,
right.
but I don't know. I'm
Go
pretty
see it.
particular
I
about
agree.
watching like
Linus is pretty
military
good.
or police because it's like there has to be a common sense to it. There has to be a logic, and then you get people writing scenarios where it doesn't make sense. It's actually stupid, and I'm like, it takes me out. It's
So
like Reacher. There's a episode where this cop is being shot at from like three different sides, and instead he gets up and starts walking in a line of fire, shooting and killing people before being gunned down. It's like normally you kind of hide when there's cover.
yeah,
You don't
and
go
the
on a
guy,
suicide trip.
yeah, and then the guy's a fucking liberal to boot. Raul, bring us home so we can wrap this up
No,
today.
listen, man. Listen, I think it's been a great conversation, a fun conversation, something a little bit different.
Yes.
I'm hopeful too. I think that we're starting to see a resurgence of interest in things that are more tangible, more important than just gabbing on social media 24/7. I think that's healthy. I love movies. Even though I can't say I'm a great follower of music or whatever. I'll tell you one thing, man. I love going to see a orchestra play. Cleveland Orchestra, the class. Some of the Tchaikovsky, Beethoven, that kind of stuff. It's when it's
Yes.
a good orchestra, it is phenomenal. Um, it is same thing. I'll go to ballet every once in a blue moon, or I love going to the theater, and seeing good plays, well acted in person, real people, especially when they interact a bit with the audience or something, and it's a really powerful story. Those things, I think we need to promote more of that, right? And I think it's an important part that I don't think we're talking about often enough because we're spending too much time talking about the things that divide us and not the things that unite us, right? And I think music and theater and entertainment has a way of uniting all of us and reminding all of us that, we're Americans first and foremost. And, the things that bind us are a lot more important than the things that divide us.
And
Oh,
I'm happy to say that the masterworks are appreciated. I go to the opera, go to the symphony, and there's not just a lot of people, there's a lot of young people. Marcus,
Right.
let's
I just
wrap it
wanted
up.
to
Go
add to
ahead.
what Raul said about uniting. It's like the FIFA World Cup. It showed like
Yeah.
the European, Latin American,
Yes.
pretty much the world audience coming to America, going to like U.S. stadiums, how they were like flabbergasted about how patriotic Americans could be, how generous they could be, and
Right.
like how they were like impressed at how like everyone knew the verses of the Star Spangled Banner, and they were moved watching them, even though they and felt a tinge of jealousy, where they can't even replicate that into their own
Yeah.
country.
Yeah.
They
That's the
fell in love with
problem.
ranch dressing, Bucky's, Waffle House, Ella Langley. Who knew? I didn't even know who Ella Langley was. Man, she's terrific and she is hot. And
Uh-huh.
Freddie from Germany made her an even bigger star. So there is yet hope.
Yeah.
So as we wrap this up, watch movies, listen to classical music, listen to good rock music. But there's a lot of stuff out there, and I look at YouTube as the modern version of a jukebox. It's
And by the way,
free.
listen to us here, okay? Like and
That
subscribe.
too. That too. Like and subscribe if you like
Make-
what you heard.
Make the
All right,
exception and watch us on your iPhone or on your computer, okay?
Yes, we're
don't,
good on
don't
any
go to the
screen.
movies. Watch us instead.
Yes, we're good on any size screen. So with that, I bid you all good night.
Take care.
Yeah, but